Hey everyone, today I want to talk about moving from classic deterministic systems to more agentic style systems using large language models in ways that you might have seen described as in AI agents. So this is our deterministic system. It has a start and an end. In the middle there's some processing done. This is a very fixed control flow, so you'll always start at the start. The processing in the middle will always be the same, and it will always have the same end result. So that could be you press a button in your platform or your dashboard and something happens, or you enter a value and it updates somewhere else. The quickest and easiest way to insert some generative AI into the system would be to replace that processing step with a large language model. So in this case, the output might be a bit more varied because in this case it's being made by generative AI, but the flow remains the same. There's still a start and an end, and in the middle there's a processing step. Now, to take this one step further, you could have different routes depending on what the input is. So at a base level with no AI, you could have a logical check, so a true false. Is a number greater than or less than a certain value? Is a text input a certain length or not? And then you could either run process A or process B based on that logical check. But you always start, have the check, one of those processes, and then reach the end. And now, what's commonly being done now with generative AI is instead of just a logical check, you can use the large language model as the router itself. And instead of processes, the large language model has access to a set of tools that it may want to use or choose one of to use in this case before the end, or not, as the case may be as well. So this is getting a closer to an AI agent. So this is a slightly kind of agentic flow in that the large language model is deciding whether or not to use one of the tools or just return plain text. So you can see here, it'll either go through this flow or direct to the end like that. Now, a very common AI agent pattern is what's called a react agent. And you can see here, it looks quite similar to before, but in this case, we have a loop between the assistant and its tools. So now in this case, we still have a start and the input goes to our AI assistant or agent. And at this point, it could still choose to go directly to the end and not use any tools. But now, instead of going from a tool direct to the end, the tool result is passed back to the AI agent, to the large language model. And at that point, it decides whether that's sufficient information to end the process and give a result, or if it needs to use the same tool again or a different tool to complete the action that you've asked for. So this is a much more agentic flow because the large language model has been given agency to choose what to do and how many times to do it. And of course, there are limits you can put into how often it is actually allowed to do that before it has to give up. But in this case, there's a lot more freedom, and you can take this to the nth degree and have different sets of tools and sub-processes before you reach your end step. So in this case, this system is a lot more flexible, but maybe less reliable because you're relying on the large language model to do a lot of the routing. Whereas if we compare it to our basic system from the start, even though we're using large language models and generative AI to create something, some output, you're still only doing it once and it's being processed straight through to the end. So that's a lot more of a reliable system, a consistent system. So none of these is inherently good or bad or better or worse. It depends on the context in which you're working. So that's the most important thing to consider is there are all these options, either non-AI based options if you don't need to use it, or complex agentic systems where LLMs can make decisions as to what is the best next step.